the reason I'm creating this work is for myself and because it needs to come out of me. And that's the intention behind why I like to do what I do and why I create the way that I create. Funnily enough, the times that I've created for something and it's been quite removed from me, they're the pieces that don't do so well, or the pieces that I haven't sold. I've always been a creative soul. I think we all are, to be honest with you. It just takes different forms for different people. My early sort of childhood and early life, I danced, and I guess that was a creative outlet for me growing up. I didn't grow up in a creative home, so I wasn't really exposed to sort of painting and that, art and that kind of world. But I was always really intrigued, really curious. And it wasn't until my late 20s that I thought, you know what, I think I might just go to art school. I think that sort of set the tone for these past sort of 10 years, I guess, essentially, was taking that risk and taking that sort of step and being like, okay, this doesn't really make logical sense, but I'm going to do it because it feels like the right step for me. And it was. And so I went to art school up in Queensland. It was such an amazing experience, met some incredible people, had a lot of fun. And from there, I didn't launch into any sort of artistic career. I sort of still kept working and doing it more as a hobby. And so the turning point for me was actually falling pregnant and moving back to Hobart. And so within that time frame, I was a new mum, I was newly sober, and I thought, I've got to start creating again. Like, I need to start creating, but the old way of creating no longer fit where I was anymore. I found it harder to paint because I had a newborn baby, so I couldn't sort of access paints and paint in that way because I'd be doing it while she was having a little nap. And so I'm like, what can I do? Like, nothing sort of fits where I'm at the moment. And it was only through watching a Roy Lichtenstein documentary and seeing that he was creating these pieces using the little dot pieces, the little tiny, yellow, blue, red, to make his comic book strip art pieces. I thought, that's kind of cool. There's something within that I wouldn't mind exploring with the dot. And so I toddled along to the art shop and found Posca pens, which make beautiful, perfect little dots. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to have a bit of a play with these because this is a medium that I can use. I can pop my little one down for a nap. I can go into my studio and I can do some dots. I can experiment with this. It's not messy. I can pick it up and put it down. And so that's where it sort of started. And, I was using these dots and I was creating these pieces, and it wasn't until sort of like a couple of years later, then studying colour therapy, which, talks about, light, vibrations, energy, atoms, like we're all made up of energy, essentially. That's all it is. And so it was funny how everything was relevant. It didn't seem relevant along the way, and spent a lot of time thinking, how's this actually going to fit together? And then I guess that's where hindsight's such a beautiful thing, because you get to a point and you're like, okay. To me, it seems like nothing's an accident. You follow these little parts and then you get to a point you're like, it's all building. It's all building towards something. And so that's been my experience of that. It's another thing that I've had to really restructure and think about is not being too rigid in my thinking about where I want to go and end up. And because I feel like a lot of stuff doesn't make logical sense. And, it is about following the breadcrumbs. And a lot of my experience has been, you take the actionable step, you do one thing, and then that opens the door to another little thing. And then you just sort of keep following it. And it's funny what then comes into line and lines up. But I think you have to continually be open to changing and exploring and keep going. And I think focusing, continually putting the focus inward, in the sense of not trying to conform to what you think other people might want. Whether it's, I need to keep creating this because that's what people want to buy, or that's what's getting into these exhibitions, whatever it might be, I think you have to just stay true to yourself. And I think that can be the most amazing thing, but most scariest thing too sometimes, is to follow that little part within. And so, yeah, right now where I'm at, it's quite interesting because I don't know what's next. And I think that can be a really incredible place to be, in the I don't know, and just taking little steps and seeing what sort of comes along. And a friend of mine used the analogy. She said, it's like I've got a puzzle and I've got all these pieces and I don't know how they fit together, and someone's moved the box.